Intimate relationships may be one of the most important sources of life happiness and satisfaction. There's a great deal of research that shows it impacts happiness, emotional well-being, and even our physical health. In this video, we're going to look at two different types of intimate relationships: our family relationships and our friendships. Let's get started first by defining what an intimate relationship is. An intimate relationship is a relationship in which there is commitment, interdependence, investment in one another, and even dialectic tensions. So what does this all mean? It means we communicate with each other frequently. We invest emotional, physical, and intellectual resources in one another. And we stay committed even in the bad times. It also means that we have a certain level of conflict in all these relationships. Studies show that women and men express intimacy differently. Women tend to share intimacy as their thoughts or feelings in a relationship, while men show intimacy through shared activities, favors, and help. Increasingly, studies show that these behaviors aren't necessarily tied to the gender of being male or the gender of being female, but more the role that a person plays in a relationship. So are they more masculine or feminine in their orientation as a person? When it comes to intimacy, there are huge cultural variations. From ideas about love and how it develops, how many partners you should be married to, how your marriage partner should be determined, and how intimacy can be expressed publicly. In more collectivist societies, there's a greater distinction between the in-group and the out-group. In other words, they'll always be more formal and slow to let in that perceived out-group. In individualistic societies, these boundaries aren't quite so sharp, making it easier to develop relationships with strangers and share more information at a much quicker pace. There is evidence due to the increase of social media and technology, and media in general, that these differences in intimacy are changing quickly and becoming more similar to our American ways. One of our most important intimate relationships starts with our family. Our family of origin is the family that we're raised in. Notice that the focus in this definition is not on the traditional view of family, but on things outside of genetics, legalities, and long-standing customs. Families exist in all kinds of manners, from biological connections to individuals who played those roles in our life, but had no biological or even adoptive connection. There are certain characteristics of family communication. First of all, the family is formative and influences us greatly. It's our first significant relationship in life. Communication in our family of origin impacts our life in a long-term way. It can impact whether we have secure relationships or insecure relationships based on how we bonded in that family. If we have secure relationships, we're more likely to have confidence, effective relationships, and greater intimacy with others. If we have poor bonding, we're more likely to have fear of rejection and abandonment issues in relationships. Some interesting research suggests that there's some impact of your birth order on some of your long-term communication behaviors. This research suggests that the oldest child is more likely to be extroverted and like to have control. The middle child is more likely to have difficult relationships with their family and choose more close relationships with friends as their primary relationships, while the last child is generally more committed and close to the overall family. In families, we're expected to play certain roles. These are patterns of behavior that define us as a group, which involve living together, taking care of, and loving one another. We also have positions in the family, such as father, daughter, son, wife, mother. We often see in families that over time, when conflict happens, certain family members take certain roles. For example, one family member may be the blamer, and that's the person who holds others responsible for whatever goes wrong but accepts no responsibility themselves. Another role is the placater, and this is the person who's always trying to go and make peace and reduce the conflict at all costs. Another role is the computer. This is the person who attempts to use logic and reason rather than emotion to diffuse the situation. Finally, there's the role of distractor that gets played, and this is the one who tries to change the subject, make irrelevant comments to get everybody to forget about the conflict. These roles point to the fact that just like all other elements, families have their own unique cultures and behaviors within the family. This culture can be seen through family rituals. These are repetitive activities that have a special meaning for the family, such as Christmas traditions, going to the beach every summer, or Thanksgiving dinner. These rituals serve the purpose of establishing the family's values and providing a sense of belonging in the family. It helps to spend time together, create memories, and emphasize the importance of family relationships. One way that culture is communicated in families is through family stories. Family stories are not only good for the entertainment they provide, but they also help the family have a shared sense of history, express what they expect of one another, and reinforce connections across the different generations of the family. Stories in family tend to have two common characteristics. Number one, they're told over and over. And number two, they always have an underlying message that means something to the family, such as, we stick together, we're proud, we overcome adversity no matter what. Families also have secrets just like individuals do. So sometimes families have information that they consider private and inappropriate for sharing with outsiders. These secrets don't just serve to protect the family. They also make you a member or part of the family. They serve to tie you to the identity and exclusivity of the family. Families have different patterns of communication. A conversation orientation relates to how open families are to discussing any range of topics. A family that has a high conversation orientation is going to interact freely and openly on any range of topics. While a family with low conversation orientation is going to have many topics that are taboo and others that can only be approached in a very restrictive way. Children who grow up in families that have a high conversation orientation generally end up having much greater interpersonal skills for later relationships. Conformity orientation in a family refers to how strongly a family enforces having the same attitudes and values and beliefs among the family. High conformity families interact in order to create harmony, avoid conflict, foster interdependence, and gain obedience to the family. These families are often based on hierarchy, with different family members having more authority than others. Conflict in these families becomes more about avoiding and obliging the person with authority. Contrastingly, communication in families with low conformity is characterized by individuality, independence, and equality. Behind this is the belief that individual growth should be encouraged and that each person should develop their own individualized interests and ways of expressing themselves. Conversation and conformity orientations combine into 4 different family communication communication patterns. In consensual families, communication is open and everything is up for discussion. But at the end of the day, the mother or father, the authority, will make the decision. In a pluralistic family, items are always up for discussion, but at the end of the day, the individual family member can make the decision. But it is expected that they're going to be respectful and listen to all the opinions of others in the family. In a protective family communication pattern, the emphasis is going to be on obedience to the authority and reluctance to share thoughts and feelings. There'd be little discussion, and the parents, the ones in authority's word would always be final. Final communication pattern is the laissez-faire communication pattern. And this would be kind of the hands-off communication pattern. So there'd be very little discussion and little exercising of authority. Everybody would kind of just be doing what they want. A growing body of research suggests that consensual and pluralistic families result in better overall communication skills for children. This open communication and shared dialogues helps children learn how to make decisions on their own and to develop interpersonal communication skills. Another important type of intimate relationship in our lives are friendships. There are all different types of friendships, but there are some commonalities among them. First of all, they're typically voluntary. We can't choose our family, but we can choose our friends. They're typically among peers, which means you have the same level of power or status. They're also governed by rules that tell us how to behave in the friendship. When we think about the rules for friendships, there's certain societal rules, like we should trust one another, you should keep your friends' secrets, we should provide support when needed, and we should stand up for our friend if they're not there. Friendships do differ by sex. When communicating with members of the same sex, both men and women value their friendships. However, women value the emotional and talking part of the friendship more, while men value the shared activities and common interest part more. You could characterize this by saying that men enjoy more doing with other men, while women enjoy more talking with other women. In opposite sex friendships, both men and women value them as a chance to see things from the other gender's perspective. Opposite sex friendships provide the opportunity for men to be more emotionally expressive and for women to enjoy more shared activities. Ever heard the saying that men and women can't be friends? Well, there's some research that support that opposite sex friends generally have some degree of physical or romantic attraction to one another, and they often communicate by flirting and sharing sexual humor and even sometimes friends with benefits with sexual interaction. More than any other relationships, friendships are shown to have a specific lifespan. According to researcher William Rollins, most friendship relationships move through 6 stages. The first is role-limited interaction, and this is the stage that follows social and cultural norms for interaction. Basically, they're strangers meeting for the first time and have civil and polite exchange, but with little real information shared. The second stage is friendly interaction, and this is the point where the conversation becomes friendlier. They share more personal information and stories. The third stage is moves towards friendships. This is when they might Facebook friend one another, exchange phone numbers, or arrange to do something together. Stage is a nascent friendship. At this point, they begin to think of themselves as friends. They begin to have their own norms and rules for interacting, maybe inside jokes, inside humor, and they become more personal and less prescribed in how they behave overall. The next stage is stabilized friendship, and this is when the friendship has stood the test of some time. They consider themselves to trust one another strongly, and they might even adjust their attitudes and opinions to be more like one another. The final stage is the waning friendship, and this is when they start to see a decline of their friendship. It may simply become more distant and casual, or it may end altogether. Research indicates that there's two main reasons that friendships end. The first is friends grow to dislike one another, and the second is friends' life circumstances can change. When friends grow to dislike one another, it usually has to do with criticism, lack of trust, physical or hostile type behavior, alcohol and drugs, a failure to support the other friend, intolerance of a romantic partner, or they find that they're growing apart in their interests. Other friendships just drift apart. So somebody might move to another city, or one friend has a family and gets married and the other stays single. And these circumstances just cause more distance and for the relationship to just kind of wane or drift away. One area of friendship that bears special discussion is friendships at work. Research shows that we often form friendships at work because we have similar power, status, a great deal in common, and at the end of the day, it makes the workday much happier if you have friends around. However, friendships at work can get complicated. Your friend may get promoted and have more status than you, or there can be competition over scarce resources at work, or even different relationships with the boss. Things can get even stickier in friendships at work if they're between the boss and the subordinate, because there's not an equal power situation in the friendship. This can make the friendship difficult because of status, privacy concerns, the boss's ability to share information in the relationship. But it can also make it difficult because of the perceived power in the relationship. So the boss has more power. One friend has more power than the other. It also can create problems with other coworkers and you having a perceived advantage by being friends with the boss. Based on all of this work-related friendship, you should think seriously about any friendships you have at work, or think about what type of friendship it is. While it's great to be friendly, you might really want to think about your level of self-disclosure in a work friendship. There's a great deal more information to be studied about families and friendships, but this ends our discussion for this course. While most of this information is common knowledge, I hope you found a few good nuggets to take with you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening.